I will be analyzing the British Museum's financial report for 2008 and 9. I will break down the report into three parts. 1. Summarizing the surplus/deficit. 2. Summarizing the revenue sources and note outstanding items. And 3. Summarize the expenditure patterns. In addition to these three parts, I will also describe each note and reveal the auditor's feelings of clean or doubtful over the finances. Part 1. Summarizing the surplus/deficit. The British Museum spent £18.2 million on improvements this year, which was up from the previous year of £12.1 million. According to the report, this was to bring the buildings up to code. The report's consolidated balance sheet tells us that the museum had fixed assets at £127 million, but as a result of the economic downturn that year, the museum ran with an investment loss of £16 million. The museum's fixed assets were lower from 2008 to 2009. In 2009, the museum had assets valued at £528,177, whereas the year before, the museum had a fixed asset valued at £564,804, a drop of £36,627. The museum also saw a dip in their current assets, going from £590,501 in 2008 to £553,063 in 2009, a loss of £37,438. When added up, the museum had a significant drop in the total funds it controlled from 2008, with a total of £587,381 to £550,191 in 2009. This was a drop of £37,190. The report shows the museum balance sheet for the period. We see the current assets and liability and provisions and charges. There were a number of drops in incomes again in 2009, seeing its investments take a large dip from £564,660 to £528,190. A loss of £36,470. As the auditor mentions, this was as a result of the economic downturn that year. The museum's total loss and gains for the year 2009 were £13,384 lost, and they managed to make back £3,284. In 2009, the loss was larger, with £26,478 versus a gain of £16,083. The total funds carried for the museum during this financial year were a total of £565,907. Part 2. Summarizing the revenue sources and outstanding items. The museum saw a number of successful exhibitions and loans during this financial year. The museum saw successful temporary exhibits on such diverse topics such as ancient Babylon and the Cultural Revolution in China. A special note was made that the museum's exhibit on the Roman Emperor Hadrian was a particularly successful one. While a large portion of the revenue came from the many exhibits put on there, a bigger chunk of revenue came from the various endowments, with both restricted and unrestricted funds. For permanent endowments, the amount of £10 million was given. The restricted funds, which were donations that have conditions attached to them, are to the tune of £14 million. Along with this is the general funds, which could be put toward anything the museum saw fit, was £54 million. In this financial year, the museum raised £8 million through fundraising. The overall expenditures for the financial year were £84 million, with £60 million focused on marketing. The museum had a jump in cash on hand from £10,240,000 in 2008 to £22,647,000 in 2009. This was a significant jump and is a good sign for the museum. A slight dip in total funds between 2008, with £587,381, and 2009, with £550,191, could have been on account of the economic downturn, or the expenditures from bringing the museum's buildings up to code. This is the largest difference in the report. The auditor states that there were no pay discrepancies, nor were there any bonus paid out to any of the senior management leaving the museum that year. The museum was without any other payment issues. Part 3, summarizing the expenditure patterns. The museum spent the most money, according to the auditor, on upgrades in the buildings, as well as the following. The sales of fixed asset investment in 2009 were $9,532,072, and in 2008 was $8,682. The museum also purchased tangible assets. In 2009, they spent £18,192 versus 2008, where they purchased £12,145 worth. The museum also spent cash on heritage assets. In 2009, they spent £1,536 versus 2008, where they only spent £1,015. They also spent cash on fixed asset investments as well, to the tune of £45,406,000 in 2009 versus £31,532,000 in 2008. Overall, the spending pattern shows an increased decrease of £11,890,000 in 2009, which was up from a slight loss of £95 in 2008. I will now be summarizing the notes in 10 words or less. The accounting policies. The accounting format follows proper legal format for the accounting audits. 2. The financial statements are prepared under cost convention modified by the tangible fixed assets. The accounts meet the requirements of accounting standards. Consolidated accounts include the museum's operating statement. Financial activities. The statement discloses all the resources receivable by the museum during the year and their health. 2. Income resources are accounted for on a receivable basis. Legacies are not thought of as income. 3. Expenditure is recognized in the statement on an accrual basis. Grants payable are recognized when they have been approved. Heritage assets. Acquisitions for this collection since April 1st, 2001, whether donated or purchased, and are recognized at the cost of value of the acquisition. Tangible fixed assets. Assets with a life of at least a year and are valued more than £5,000. Financial instruments. The museum has implemented FRS 25, 26, and 29 for the first time from April 1st, 2008. A financial statement is any contract that gives an asset of one company and a financial liability or instrument of another company. Financial instruments are recognized on the museum's balance sheet when the museum becomes a party to the contractual provisions of the instrument. Loans and receivables. Loans and receivables, financial instruments, are non-derivative financial assets, available for sale, or AFS. AFS financial instruments are non-derivatives. Impairment of financial assets. An assessment of whether there is an objective proof of impairment. Comparative information. The museum has taken advantage of the exemption offered to entities adopting FRS 25, 26, and 29 for the first time in 2008/2009. Investment properties. Investment properties continue to be treated in conjunction with SSAP 19, disclosed at market value. Investment in subsidiaries is carried at cost. Stock. Stock is stated at the lower of cost. Provisions. The museum provides for legal or constructive obligation to which of uncertain timing or amount on the balance sheet. Liquid resources, referred to in the cash flow statement, are defined as current assets held as disposable stores of value. They have no financial leases. Foreign currency. Transactions in foreign currency are translated to the current exchange rate. Pensions. Present and past employees of the British Museum are covered by the Principal Service Pension Fund. Tax. The museum is eligible under the Income and Corporation Tax Act of 1988 of the Inland Revenue to seek exemptions from taxes on income. Fund structure, broken down into 4 parts. 1. Restricted permanent endowments. 2. Restricted funds whose investment or usage is subject to restriction. 3. Designated funds that have been set aside for a purpose. And 4. General funds put aside to help when needed. Final thoughts. The auditor does not find any discrepancies in the financial report. He states that there is no pay issues and that there were no payouts that year to retirees or senior management. The auditor also states that all of the dips and changes are a result of the economic downturn, and major renovations caused the museum to have a loss overall with their funds than the previous year. Thank you.